Hello, I am Michelle Lambert, and I have some historical questions for you. You see, the people of the United States, they've forgotten how to be members of a republic, which is to be expected and rather sad. So what do I mean? You forgot. Well, we were much different in the 1940s. As a society, we're much different. We had our own beliefs in the U.S. Constitution. We believed in following these beliefs, and we believed in teaching our children these beliefs. But we ran into some problems. We had to fight the Nazis. We didn't see what was really going on. And we lost our way. Sure, we saved the world from the Nazis, but at the sacrifice of our children's future. But we believed in the Catholics. The Catholics who were being run by the monarchs. How is that a problem? I don't know. And meanwhile, our Baptists, our Protestants, they got killed off. They got killed off in the Nazi war. And this was all planned out on purpose by the Catholic Church. Because they didn't want us. They didn't want us teaching freedom or civil rights to anybody. They wanted to end us. They wanted to stop us. So they did their best to try and do just that. And like my great-grandparents, they were like, well, we can solve this later. We'll do it on TV or something, it'll be easy. Well, they tried that, and they thought they had it, and they just didn't have it at all, and by the time they realized they didn't have it at all, it was way too late. The Democrats had taken control, and the original thinking, the original way of thinking was lost. And they said, okay, we lost that generation. We'll get the next generation on TV. Which, again, turned out to be a dismal failure. Because television and getting people to think with television, they were warned by several geniuses that this would not work. But they went ahead and tried to do it anyway. And we still have generations of kids who don't know how to think for themselves, who just think, okay, I just read it on the newspaper, I watch it on TV, and that's the answer. That is so wrong. That is not how a republic is supposed to work at all. It's just terrible. So what are we supposed to do as Americans? Well, you're supposed to, the old way of doing it was that we wouldn't watch cartoons on Saturday. We would come home, we would not plug in our telephone and email friends. We wouldn't play video games on the computer. No, we would come home, we would sit around the kitchen table, and we would watch or read the newspaper. The local newspaper would be fine. And what we would do is, maybe if we had like 2 or 3 toddlers, we would have Daddy pick up the newspaper. He would read everything carefully. We would pick out like 5 articles. And he would read everything to the entire family. Everyone would sit there and they would listen. And then after he was done reading an article, he would say, okay, now I want you to take out your notebook, and I want you to jot down what you think for 15 minutes about this article. And when you're done, you let me know. And so they would write down what each one thought about that article for themselves. And then he'd be like, okay, now, what would your favorite Democrat, your favorite Democrat senator, respond to that question, that answer? What would his answer be? And so everybody would take 15 minutes, write that down. And then he would say, okay, now I want you to think about your last favorite president. Write down what he would have said about this thing. What do you think he would have said? And, okay, everybody would write that down. And then your local mayor. And then your local business keeper. Or somebody you really respected and loved. What would they say about such a thing? And then we would continue on. And we would get maybe 20 responses, 20 different responses for one newspaper article. And then he would have everyone, sit down and give out their answers. Didn't care if it was just a teacher they knew in school or, a neighbor or, whomever. And then they would all give out their answers, and hopefully they would all be different. And he would eventually say, okay, now what is the best answer? Is it this guy? Is it this congressman? Is it this senator? Is it this past president? Who gave the best answer to this problem? And they would think about it and debate it. I think this teacher I know did a great job finding out the answer. Or, maybe this senator has the best answer. Or maybe this congress lady has the best answer. And they would think about it. They would come up with their own solutions. And he wouldn't judge them on which one's right or which one's wrong. He would just have them think about it. Carefully think about it. And once they were done, he would say, okay, these are your best answers. And they would write it all down. And they would put those best answers aside with their names on it. Sort of in a pile of papers. And then he would move on to the next article. And he would do the same thing. And he would ask those questions once again. What would different Congress people say? What would different people say? What would different thinkers say? And what would happen? And then when he was done with all the answers and all the articles for that day, it would be 6 p.m. Nobody watched a cartoon. Nobody spent any time on the internet. They just talked to themselves. And then he asked them, okay, so what's the best answer here? And they would come up with their own. And he would be like, are you sure? And they would be, yeah, that's the right answer. But he wouldn't stop there. Next week, he would go back and review it. Or maybe in 3 weeks, he would review it. Because time had passed, new answers had come out, and things had appeared. But unfortunately, as Americans, we don't do that anymore. We've lost our sense of ability of thinking. Do you know how critical this is? This is dangerously critical. We've gone from thinking as Americans to this crazy mob mentality of do what the TV says. That's so wrong. Why is our country destroying itself and becoming just a ragtag mob instead of finding the answer themselves? Why? So that's what you have to think about. Michelle Lambert for the day. Bye.